Okay. Um, Day 2, 11 Days of Remembrance. Reading from the book. Okay. Part 1. Heading towards the abyss. Sinister plots in the New Germany. A clear blue sky hovered over Berlin on the afternoon of June 29, 1934, with the chief of the German General Staff, General Lodbrok, was escorted into the canvas office of Adolf Hitler, a World War One corporal. Hitler had seized absolute control of the government after being appointed chancellor 17 months earlier by a aging single president Paul von Hindenburg, 17 months earlier by aging President Hindenburg. The 54-year-old Beck was highly regarded at home and abroad as the most efficient and humane German soldier of his generation. He had sought the opportunity because of morning evidence that the new German leader was planning a ritual the nation of 80 million persons to launch a war of conquest. At mid-terms, by told Hitler that he did not intend to build an army to conquer the other countries. His purpose was to create an efficient army to defend Germany. Hitler, noted for a quick temper, replied tastily, General Beck, it is impossible to build up an army and give it sense of worth. Its object of its excellence is not the preparation for battle. Armies for the preparation of peace do not exist. They exist for triumph and in war. Before he departed, Beck told Hitler that another war would become a multi-front conflict that Germany could not survive. Only minutes after returning to the General Staff, Beck received a telephone call from Admiral William Carriers, a category hardly practiced spy in World War One, whom Hitler had appointed chief of the German Secret Service. 6 months earlier, on Khrushchev's 17th birthday, a spectrum who spoke with a lisp. Castro was well educated and could speak the language of Germany's potential enemies, England, France, and the Soviet Union. He too feared Hitler was embarking on a warpath that could eventually destroy Germany as a nation. Speaking in guarded tones, Carlos told Beck that the dictator was preparing to launch a purge to wipe out all sources of opportunity on his Nazi regime. On the officers' hit list were General Kurt von Tussle, Hitler's predecessor as Chancellor, and Hitler's close friend and Assistant General Kurt von Berdum, who had once held high posts in the Edward. Churches, he told Hitler, was confident that Schlesser was concerned getting French ambassador to get rid of the Nazi regime by restoring the heritage and decorations of the traditional royal family to the throne of Germany. Beck thought that Hitler suspicious was well and sent a trust in to warn Schlesinger that the dangers of Schlesinger, however, seemed undercut. At high noon on June 30th, less than 24 hours after Beck had crashed with Hitler, 5 men in civilian clothes barged into General Schlessinger's villa. They went to the study where Schlesinger was working on some papers, pulled out pistols, and shot the former chancellor. Vera von Schlesinger, who had been in another room, rushed in the study. She too was shot and killed. 2 hours later, Samuel von Verdun was the Hotel Adon in Berlin drinking tea with the French diplomat was messenger from General Lutemberg. He and an envelope with a short note telling him that Schlesinger had been murdered. Barrow fussed and turned into Frenchmen. He said with a snarl, "I wonder what the pigs haven't killed me yet." Barrow told him that Schlesinger was the only man who could have saved Germany. "He was my leader. Now there is nothing for me," he declared. Boudreaux took a taxi to his home, and just 5 o'clock that afternoon he answered a ring in his front door. 2 men whipped out pistols and riddled the general with bullets, killing him almost instantly. Adolf Hitler had launched one of the bloodiest purges the European history had ever known. He realized that war was the last thing most of his generals wanted. He lamented that they were conspiring to restore the Hohenzollern. Hitler had sent a motion of suspects to not only Adolf Gotti but also to British on the horror that they approached began suddenly when the War Minister General von Berg ordered that Schlesinger and Brugge were the best regarded as traitors, and that no general or admiral was to attend their funerals. Much at the risk to their careers, often around the general Herbeck Kirchner had a black uniform, Schlesinger SS as elite cubs with the served as Hitler's bodyguard and friendly loyal to him. On August 2nd, 1934, a month after Schlesinger and Boe were regarded as traitors and burned, they long-stuck 87-year-old President Paul Lyndon von Hindenburg died at his estate in East Prussia. Earlier, Hitler had obtained a political testament from the old warrior that named Hitler to succeed him as president. Now Hitler moved swiftly and had no Russian president of a great nation. Only minutes after Hindenburg died, Hitler proclaimed himself Führer, supreme leader, and launched a strategy to include his admirals and generals to swear allegiance to him. No doubt acting on the Führer's orders, War Minister von Blomberg directed all of Germany's generals to the 100 of the assassinated at 3 o'clock same afternoon at the front of the Schlesinger. The Countdown victory in Berlin, unknown to his brass, Hitler was proclaimed to assert a coup defeat that would give him total control of Germany. The forces he generals had trained at the dead President Hindenburg cannons were fired and band played multiple tunes that were 2 minutes of silence. Then General von Blomberg stood from the Frankfurter to the Bloodberg of the Tunic Knights. The army commander, General Roman von Richter, the renter of them. "I swear by God this holy oath that I return to Adolf Hitler, Führer of the German nation and people." Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, understood obedience, and I am ready as a brave soldier to risk my life at any time for this oath. All over Germany at the same time, the rank file of the forces returned the same blood oath, walking with General Fuss said this victor uh, for the oath means physical and moral suicide. Further, with back halted again, both generals realized that they had been tricked into taking an oath not to Germany or the Constitution, but to Adolf Hitler, as he looked at us unawares, but said mournfully, "I did not realize that we were certainly coming with new forms of oath." Fuhrer Hitler in the months ahead continued to rearm Germany, but to carry out his plans of widespread conquest he had to rid himself of these who would return. Remberg was known in the officer corps as the Rubber Lion, one willing to prevent the Fuhrer descent the December 1937 Bloomberg, 59 years old and a widower, asked Hitler's permission to marry a 26-year-old therapist. The Fuhrer gave his blessings and was a witness to the wedding ceremony. Bloomberg and his new young wife departed for a honeymoon on the romantic Isle of Capri, a longtime colony of Hitler. General Hermann Goering immediately began to hatch a scheme to oust the war minister, known behind his back as Fat Herman. Goering deeply covered Bloomberg's job, giving the Bloomberg to an expert Schwarzschild, hot from the head of the chief of the Central SD, Hugh branch of the SS, brilliant and with the intentions of Barracuda. He highly understood that the woman that they would be quite fond of women. That was no crime in the Third Reich, but it could be a variable blackmail weapon at some future date. The work had discovered occasional civilian clothes and spent evenings in some of Berlin's more exotic night spots. Although at the time, SD men began throwing over reports of Kerman civil police and the jackpot. General Patton was the rubber guard. Goering was ecstatic. He rushed to see the Fuhrer, soon the war minister, to return to Berlin from his honeymoon. Ignored suggestions from German generals he had known for many years to take a Luger and blow his brains out. Now Hitler heard the question about who would succeed Bamberg, leading towards appointing General Werner von Wittgen. Hindenburg had appointed commander of the army in May 1935. Almost that himself had not been chosen. Goering led to dig up dirt on General von Wittgen again. Otto Summit. No doubt to the Jesuit that the summit found Joe Russian. Desperate a total lack of communications of charges, trial papers were drawn up. Russian learning of the turned up charges, French was apologetic and he determined his immediate interview with the Fuhrer, unknown to the general Hermann Goering, and had for Burleson Joe to be present in the library of the Bertrand Trudeau Bourbon Dill replied to his story, his front of following Hitler, seemed he had been well coached. The notorious ex-convict claimed that he has children wearing a Miracle Road station and the living room. Joe picked up the military officer and went with him to a nearby dark lane. He claimed Fritchen Prota that he had not been in the Reno railroad station for many years and that he had never owned a silver-headed cane. A soft-spoken man isn't a political throat-cutting. Fritchen prayed Aguirre's hands not to react violently to Bourbon Joe's story. Evidence against him. Conspiracy. Hitler immediately checked to the high-ranking general, a corps officer with a similar last name, Achtung von which the Führer received to restore arguing the general fragment that meanwhile Hitler vast and orders what against him. The Führer with the Achtung der Kosten with his general staff, Hitler by Goering was the total control of 80 million people and now powerful army, navy, and Luftwaffe. Burgo's call on a Japanese spy master. Lieutenant Commander Erwin M. Zutrid was assigned to the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington, D.C. He had become convinced that Imperial Navy Captain Terminal Yamagachi of the Japanese espionage leader he spoke English fluently and seemed to enjoy the social life in Washington. Because of his suspicion, Zucker's made to the contract of Yamagachi and a possible one in Yamaguchi 1936. Yamagachi Mayflower Hotel, sniping the 40-year-old Zimmergers of the few Jewish Navy Academy graduates of the generation noted that Dragoon Ben, the Vice Admiral Robert Whitman Edmund, and Lieutenant General Everett von Butcher of the quite friendly with Yamagachi. They told that the only way that the previous relationship between the two Nazis and Yamagachi began quite fluently with the views of the respective governments, with the drawing to close general their wife, Yamagachi. In the past, two Germans had always departed after only a few minutes. How Nazis in nearly 3 hours. Zerfeld felt the party was held previous opportunity for two Germans and Yamagachi to discuss some important matters with attaching under again. Across the suspicious room, the General judge nodding towards the two Germans and the Japanese. Authorities had told the situation evolved into a cat-and-mouse game. Who would outwit whom? Finally, with the waiters, he cleared all the dishes. Zetro and his wife went to Yamagachi's side to certain that the two Nazis and the Soviet will fall for the same time. Therefore, that the Germans have chances to conclude business with the host. Early the next morning, Zetro, the captain, drove Yamagachi has the German Colonel Walter Yamagachi and the Great War had held secret meetings within his Japanese counterparts in Tokyo with 2 weeks earlier. How much for the two nations that the Germans in the Pacific regions were currently at the Contra at the Panama Central Zone. Adolf Hitler was energetic that the energetics of the began out to ambassador to Japan to two nations intelligence exchange. Now within 48 hours of the Mayflower Hotel party, the woman became a surveillance of the Eltman Towers, an apartment building in the center of Wisconsin's and Massachusetts avenues and Washington in the high-level suite. Captain Gauchi and living quarters Captain Switzerland when the captain for the Japanese espionage activities in the United States. On the first night of the activities, on-mic technicians held in a Pesco truck parked near the Alban Towers. Session picked up mysterious noises where some in the building, Zuccarchi told the Tokyo Suite, a major concern that Yamagaki had been on the OMI, that's the Navy Lieutenant Jack Hudson, who at the Navy radio exchange expert named MacGyver, doing civilian techniques that drove to Alban Towers at Houghton, worked swiftly with the tuned ears to any noise that might mean that the doctor without the transfer. Did the United States several months later on November 25th, 1936, the cozy state between Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany and Emperor Hirohito, Japanese Empire became known in the called the Anti-Constitution Pact and began to that 2 years later, Damon Yamaguchi was called back to Tokyo and planned to Admiral assisted to the Navy Ministry a sneak attack on U.S. specifically at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. 10 moles and Hitler's high command. Switzerland, a small country high in the snow Alps with a population of some 5 million, is a land of beauty scenery. The calm working people produce the world's finest watches and rich of the chocolate Federation dictated because Switzerland had decades been an island of peace, is located to cockpit of Central Europe and great powers Germany, France, and Italy. It became a messiah for spies for many nations beginning in the late 1930s. Two German special SD had contacted of secret agents to the tiny country than any other nation. Leaders of the two German spies and presumed that they were Switzerland. Therefore, then became established before 200 miles north of the Swiss border to deal selectively with matters in Switzerland. The secret officers went out that the Nazis, espionage agents, SS, his wife Helene Herder, and Germany, born in Hungary but trained at Skinlag, a school operated by Soviet intelligence service just outside Moscow. Radio, as he known to the friends. He had the present a few years working for the Colonel of the Soviet Communist Party leadership, formed revolutions in Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Germany. A radio source of intelligence months in Switzerland. In 1937 was kept a king with its spy Otto Fajon, to the Nazi regime. A former Swiss journalist, Punter, had been a Swiss communist secret since July 10, 1930. He had taken part in the airplane flight over Milan, Italy, and it was couple of years after radio was Buchanan himself. In 1926, the Spanish Civil War erupted, putting the Loyalist army of the existing regime, the Naturalist forces of Kosovo volunteer combat. Adolf Hitler found the threat with the Spanish regime collapsing in December 1938, flew to London and was invited to the Communist Party headquarters on King Street. They had received Douglas Springhill had the political commander of the Switzerland and Soviet Union. Germany had then target. Footnote: the Rule de Mont Blanc, covered October 10, 1938, had wear white scarf, neck the first turner, uterus and Germany since 1936. The housekeeper alone counts. Savina lived in comfort on her monthly salary of 1,000 Swiss francs, the equivalent to about $3,500 in 1999, paid by Soviet intelligence command by long-term job. Then on January 10, 1939, they received at the front of the office in Switzerland. Savina was shocked. Hitler was always so closely guarded that the parameters that at the place there was a tiger during the Spanish Civil War with the Children Brigade. That months later, in August 1939, Savina was the two British spies to return to Switzerland. Meanwhile, two middle-aged men in civilian clothes got off a train in Stuttgart, Switzerland, went to the home of the old friend Rudolf Rosseler. Two visitors of German general and command Adolf Hitler, danger of nationalism, took the job of nationalism in the summer of 1934, 18 months after Hitler became Chancellor. Veteran of Ender the von Witter, New Life told the Germans that the brutal Russian war will bring back by Nazism, outbreaking on the enemies of Hitler and nationalism. Rudolf planned several months turned at risk of a German national Christian Snyder, who was written as anti-Nazi. Des Gut, one general, said before leaving the visitor, turning over codes and preparing for the event that took the pot. They were friendly nations. A few days after German generals had returned to Berlin, Russell with Xavier Snipper, a young Swiss who had become a close friend. Snipper was part-time a member of the Swiss Secret Service and had often snuck across the border into the Third Reich, wearing the uniform of a German corporal. Were being cautiously careful not to disclose the entire truth. Russell was a friend that had secret contacts in Berlin who would provide him with secrets and continuing intelligence. With the veteran writer Kodo, Roger mentioned the well-known 70-year-old of Swiss intelligence agency. The veteran of Nazi Germany came up with a solution at Canton known as Uncle Tom. A Czech national agreed to act a co-between with the British Secret Service. Actually, he was Colonel Thomas Sedlak, but some continued in that undercover role for more than 5 years. And so those were Several months later, nationalists, nationalism, the visitors of German Ontario. Rushmore was then told to run the following 5 years. Meanwhile, Rudolf Hausner, the said that the trustworthy Russian name that the German early in May 1940 had the Kaiser Berlin radio Russia was daily the launch case yellow, a massive invasion of France, Belgium, uh, from the British, Dutch, and the Belgian embassies were taken down on May 10th. The Russia began before that the intelligence board caused the BBC Radio London that there were reasons why that about Nazi Germany, London from fighting in the Spanish Civil War found that the deputy chief MI6, the girl sees her, the, the double agent in November 1940, the boss in the Soviet spy ring, Sonia. He told him that they had fallen in love with the other British agent, William Phelps, and the two were going to London to live. Foote was stunned. He knew that the highly efficient British counterintelligence service planned anything good Christmas the couple a little for the spring of 1941 that had Swiss intelligence about Vietnam. Encouragement refused to unmask his Berlin counterparts, so when the German intrigue warned the Soviets that Adolf Hitler was going to invade Russia along with 1,000-mile front at the dawn of June 22, 1941, the intelligence was ignored. Adolf Hitler war machine gained total surprise and planning into deep the Soviet Union. For then 2 months, Moscow centered suddenly approached the then Roosevelt shouts for alarm. About 24 hours after the horseman struck, he had gained really Soviet money and a monthly salary of 77,000 Swiss francs, about 16,000 US dollars in 1999. During most of the remainder of the war, Reuschler thought his severely planned contact troop included that permitted just the Stalin army to stay on crucial jump, and with the Rutherford they felt the double agent who radioed Moscow centered thousands of pages of highly grade information early in 1943 that gang Soviet Union had major in the Red Army. That's it. I'll read more tomorrow. I'll read more tomorrow. I have read that. Well, if you see a veteran, thank him. If you see a veteran, and thank you to the veterans who fought to make me be free.